Hello, everyone, and welcome to NJBIA's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion meeting. We thank you all for attending and joining us today. We're going to give everyone a few seconds to migrate in from the waiting room. As you make your way in, please mute yourself and switch your view from gallery to speaker. If you're not sure how to do that, the NJBIA team will post some directions in the chat feature. All right. My name is Jason Holt. I am a member at the law firm of Chiesa, Shahanian, and John Tomasi, and I'm one of the council leaders of the NJBIA's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Council. As I stated earlier, we're glad you could make it to this month's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion meeting. But a quick reminder, we're recording this program and it will be sent out to you within 48 hours. All right, I'm going to give a big, huge welcome and shout out to my co-chairs for 2023. Bianne de Guzman, she's the Director of Development of iLearn Schools, Inc. Shai Hopkins, Marketing Coordinator of New Jersey Small Business Development Center. Jackie Lurea, President of Alexina Consulting. Craig Morton, Assistant Vice President for Student Affairs of Fairleigh Dickinson University. Andrea Murphy, Director of Environmental Affairs and Sustainability of Panasonic North America. And Denise Venuti-Free, Director of Communications and External Affairs of New Jersey American Water. I'd also like to thank all of our sponsors, our sustaining partner, NJ Manufacturers Insurance Group, our business roundtable partner, Verizon, and our event partners, Association Master Trust, Capital Health, the law firm, again, of Chiesa, Shahanian, and John Tomasi, Integris, and New Jersey Business Magazine. Also, we're going to incorporate into this event, so make sure you take advantage of our, a little later, of our networking, excuse me. And now I'd like to toss the baton to NJBIA.
Thank you so much. We at NJBIA are thrilled that this group continues to grow and thrive under the leadership of such amazing people. For those of you who are new to the New Jersey Business and Industry Association, we are the largest statewide business association in the country, representing approximately 1 million jobs in the state of New Jersey, which amounts to about 1/4 of New Jersey's workforce. We offer customer development opportunities, visibility through events, magazine ads, or our podcast and TV shows, and money-saving discounts on stuff you're probably already paying for, like payroll, healthcare, 401k solution, and HR support. If you're interested in more info on us, I will drop the website into the chat along with my contact info. Please feel free to be in touch and we can get you whatever you need. Also, please don't forget to register for our DE&I Summit on April 13th at the Holiday Inn in Clark. I'll add the summit info into the chat. And I am Kate Conroy. That's all for me. And now I will toss it back to the fabulous Jason Holt. Thank you.
Okay, it's my distinct, thank you very much. It's my distinct honor and pleasure to introduce Natalie Williams, who's the Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at Verizon, leading workforce and workplace initiatives. She has 23 years of leadership experience where she has focused on building an inclusive, skilled workforce with passion, energy, and innovation. Natalie is currently responsible for the development and execution of the DEI workplace strategy for Verizon. Her primary focus is ensuring that there is a culture of inclusion and belonging that is embedded within business practices and core initiatives. She creates tailored solutions that target the critical moments of the employee life cycle, from onboarding through employee career journey. Outcomes are designed to impact Verizon's brand promise, revenue, growth, and Verizon being the employer of choice. Natalie, welcome to NJBIA. We are thrilled to have you here with us today.
And I am absolutely thrilled to be here, and I appreciate the invite and looking forward to the conversation. And thank you, Jason, for the awesome introduction. And this work has a lot of meaning for me. So as Jason mentioned, I've been with Verizon. This is my 24th year with Verizon. I started at the age of 19 years old. I was a single mother. I didn't have any formal education at the time. I've earned all of my formal education through Verizon's tuition assistance program. I've earned my bachelor's degree in business administration and also hold a master's degree in public administration. So this work is super important. And when I think about the course of my career, I started on the front line in a customer service role, and I relocated a couple of times. I'm currently sitting here in Atlanta, Georgia. And this work that I'm going to talk to you about today, I'm a product of how diversity, equity, and inclusion can actually play out within the workplace and ensure that everyone has an opportunity to be successful. And that is what diversity, equity, and inclusion is about, that everyone has an equitable opportunity to scale their career and be successful. And they have a sense of belonging where they can be their true, authentic selves within the workplace. And so I'm super excited to have an opportunity to chat with you about that today. So I'm going to share my screen so we can hop right in. All right, can everyone see my screen okay? Am I sharing? Okay, perfect. All right, so today I'm going to talk to you about diversity, equity, and inclusion at Verizon and what that means for the organization, why inclusion matters. That's a key focus for us as we move into the back end of this year, into next year and moving forward. And then also I'm going to focus on our employee resource group platform as well. We'll have some time for some questions, so I encourage everyone, if you have any questions or comments, to please post those as we continue through the presentation. Okay, so DEI at Verizon. So diversity, equity, inclusion, as I shared with you earlier, it truly is an integrated shared responsibility. So we don't see DEI as a responsibility core to the human resources function or the DEI office. We truly want to impress upon the entire organization that we all have a shared responsibility in this work. One of our foremost objectives as an organization is to ensure that we're creating collaborative, inclusive, and diverse environments. So within Verizon, our customers, among our business and community partners and suppliers, all of that is in scope. Though today I'm going to focus more on our employee stakeholder, when we think about diversity, equity, and inclusion, it's an integrated shared responsibility across our entire business strategy. So we view this as not only the right thing to do, we know it's the right thing to do, but it's also a business imperative, and it's also our competitive advantage as well. So DEI is certainly how we achieve success, and we ensure that we're celebrating diversity across all spectrums, including but not limited to race, ethnicity, national origin, religion, gender, sexual orientation, gender identity and expression, disability, veteran and military status, age. And we are a stronger company and culture because we focus and celebrate our unique lived experiences. So next I want to share with you what this integrated shared responsibility model looks like and what our strategic framework is actually focused on. So we have 4 key stakeholders across our business strategy: our employees, our customers, society, and our shareholders. When we think about diversity, we define diversity as differences in backgrounds and experiences that make a person or a group unique. From an equity perspective, all of our policies, processes, any initiatives that are designed to promote access and opportunity for all, we ensure that our goal is to ensure that they're free from bias. And from an inclusion standpoint, again, we want to ensure that we're creating a sense of belonging where everyone can be their full authentic selves and contribute through full participation. So when we do all of these things together, we focus on our 4 key stakeholders together, and at our core, really lean into how we see diversity, equity, and inclusion. We know that we have a responsible business, we're building innovation and trust, and of course that leads to growth. So diversity, equity, and inclusion are required in order for us to achieve equality. And you heard me say earlier that we see DEI as our competitive advantage, and it certainly is how we achieve business results as well. So when you think about DEI at Verizon, these are just some of the numbers that really illustrate our commitment to this work. So from our employee resource group standpoint, so our corporate social responsibility platform, we encourage our employees to give back to the communities and where we do business. We have 10 employee resource groups, and I'm going to talk to you about that in a moment. But that's about 28,000 employees across our employee population globally who are part of one or more employee resource groups. That's a little over 20% of the employee population. These employees have an opportunity to contribute their time, talents, and treasures through their volunteerism in community. And so through our volunteerism platform, we actually have opportunities where our employees can sign up to volunteer, whether that be in-person events, virtual activities. Some of those activities may be actually mentors to students. They may be cleaning roadways within their communities. There are many different ways that they can engage, but over 48,000 hours from our employee resource groups were actually contributed last year. So we're pretty excited about that. Also, we participate in the Gallup survey, where we actually do a pulse survey once per quarter with our entire employee population, where we're looking to gauge how they see inclusion within the environment. Are they engaged? Are they happy within the workplace? We're pretty excited that we're in the 88th percentile in terms of creating a culture of inclusion. And so more work to do, but we certainly make sure that our employees understand that the goal is to ensure that they can show up as their full authentic selves each and every day. 45% of our board representation is ethnically and racially diverse. We actually scored number 7 in the Fortune Top 500 companies for diversity and inclusion, and a 100% score on the Disability Equality Index. And we have actually invested over $53 billion over the last 10 years with diverse suppliers. So as you can see with these results, it really spans the gamut of where we have an opportunity to influence within the communities and where we do business, with our employees directly, with our customers, with our suppliers. So again, truly an integrated shared responsibility across the business platform. And we certainly believe that DEI is our strength, is our competitive advantage, and we'll continue to focus in these areas to ensure that we're elevating the bar. So when you think about workforce and workplace and how we think about human capital, Verizon, we really want to ensure that not only are we delivering on the purpose of making a more connected world with the best technology, but we also believe that it takes the best people to get there as well. And so when you think about our human capital strategy to create a best-in-class V team, we're really looking for the best skills, potential, and inspiration to give Verizon a competitive edge now and to the future. And so there are 3 core pillars that we anchor around across the business. And when we look at our DEI councils within our organization, so each of our business units actually have a DEI council where they're focused on supporting the overarching DEI strategy for Verizon. But those councils are focused on 3 distinct areas: attracting the right talent for our future, developing our talent to their fullest potential, and inspiring our talent to build a career at Verizon. So again, we want to ensure that DEI continues to be an integrated, shared responsibility woven through the fabric of how we do business, both internally and externally. And we certainly understand now more than ever that in order for us to deliver the talent that is necessary to create the networks and move the world forward, that how we attract, develop, and inspire will continue to be critically important. All right, so I'm going to pause for a moment. Jason, are there any questions before I hop into inclusive leadership?
I don't see any. Let me double check. No, there are no questions at this point. I just want to remind everyone, though, to join us for the networking session at the end of your presentation. Thank you.
All right, perfect. Thank you, Jason. So we'll keep it moving. So inclusive leadership, I mentioned earlier that inclusive leadership is a very important part of how we'll continue to integrate diversity, equity, and inclusion across our business platform. We understand that inclusive leadership is a business imperative. It's not enough for us to say that diverse, equitable, and inclusive environments are important. It's also critically important to ensure that our leaders are equipped, prepared, and are accountable to our expectations in terms of creating an inclusive environment. And just to be clear, inclusivity is not just about gender inclusion. It's not just about racial or ethnic inclusion. There are many different facets of diversity, as we all know. So it's critically important to make sure that leaders are agile enough to recognize where they may have biases, recognize unconscious bias, that they are consciously inclusive. And when they're making decisions around their teams and forming their teams, not only are they thinking about diversity as it relates to physical attributes, but also diversity in thought is critically important as well. So what I'm sharing with you here is really some research that we have done around how inclusion really shows up within the workplace and how it impacts decisions that your potential employees are making, those who are job seekers that are interested in your organization, your internal workforce. But we understand that inclusion is the skill that makes diversity work, and it's proven to make companies more successful. So when you embrace inclusivity within the environment, it's the right thing to do as a leader. And our goal is to ensure that our leaders, our people leaders, understand the importance of creating those environments within the workplace. So I'm not going to read through everything that's here, but generational diversity in the workplace is growing. We certainly see that. Companies often employ people from up to 4 different generations, with each generation having their own unique style, needs, goals, and traits. And so that was from Harvard in 2021. And so when you think about the many different generations that are represented in the workforce, again, the agility of the leader is critically important. Ensuring that they're creating an environment where everyone has a voice is critically important, and that they understand their contributions to the business, that's important as well. And also understanding the unique differences in the needs across the employee population is important. Inclusive leadership is a strategic competitive advantage. And so companies with inclusive practices in hiring, promotion, development, team management, generate up to 30% more revenue per employee and greater profitability than their competitors. And so that's cited from Better Up in 2021. And as I've been saying throughout this entire conversation, inclusive leaders are good for organizations. So a diverse workforce does little without an inclusive leader who can leverage the diversity of their people, thoughts, and experiences. A failure to invest in leaders who embody inclusivity can significantly impair an organization's growth, innovation, and performance. So again, when we think about inclusivity, thinking about inclusive thought, mindset, how do you ensure that everyone has a voice at the table? How do you pull the best out of each individual and ensure that they know how their contributions are impacting the overall results of the business and that they have a place within the organization? That's really important. And so one step that we've taken as an organization, when you think about holding leaders accountable, making sure that we have very clear expectations around what we expect as they engage with their teams, we have a set of leadership principles that we employ across the entire organization. And those leadership principles are grounded in self-leadership, business leadership, and team leadership. And one principle that we've added for this year is inclusive leadership, so fostering inclusion. And so within adding that leadership principle, we have been very clear and intentional around what it means to create an inclusive environment, what actions you can take as a leader to create an inclusive environment for your team. And so we're pretty excited about that work, and we're pulling that through to our performance management processes as well. Okay, I believe I saw a question that popped up or a hand that raised. Jason, are there any questions?
Question, which is, there's one question, which is, how do you help employees understand their contribution and the importance of it? And is it integrated into a successful performance evaluation?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think first, for the individual leader, I think it's really important to understand what are the motivators for that employee. Why is the employee there? What are they looking forward to each and every day? What do they want to accomplish? What does good look like to them? I think if you start there and understand what are their motivating factors, it's much easier to correlate that to the overarching goals of the business. And so oftentimes what we find is that leaders have their teams. Of course, everyone has a goal or a target that they're seeking to achieve. And those conversations are very much centered on how to attain those targets or objectives, which is great. Obviously, many of us are for-profit organizations. We want to make sure that we're driving revenue and growth. But there also has to be balance in that conversation, in that it can't only be one-sided in terms of what you want the employee to do for the business, but also ensuring that you paint a very clear picture in terms of how that work translates to their individual goals and aspirations as well. So my advice and recommendations would be ensuring that leaders are taking the time to understand the person, right? So we are leading people. I always say that for Verizon specifically, we're a technology organization, but just as much we are a people organization as well. And so you really have to love the good, bad, ugly, and indifferent. And so get to know the individual person and what's actually motivating them, and correlate that to your business objectives, and ensure that they understand how their work, their contributions translate to not only the success of the organization, but their long-term success as well.
What methodology do you use to determine that leaders are actually accomplishing the things that you have outlined here in your presentation?
So we have many different ways. So I mentioned that one thing that we are actually incorporating into the environment today is really looking at ensuring that not only are we evaluating the what that's actually occurring, meaning the activities that are occurring each and every day to get to the results, but also the how. So we're looking at leadership ratings and actually, what are you doing? How are you actually engaging with your team? And one way that we measure that is through our quarterly survey process to our employee population, where we have an opportunity to gauge what's actually happening within the environment, and we can trend those results over time. So one really good way to make sure that you have a good pulse is, one, making sure that you have performance standards that are clearly outlined in performance agreements in terms of what your expectations are, and that you have an evaluation system, whether that be quarterly or biannually, where you're actually having targeted discussions with your leaders, with your employees around their performance and their contributions, specifically around their leadership capabilities. So incorporating that into the performance management process will be critically important. What I've observed in many conversations that I've had with practitioners is that oftentimes it sits separate and apart. There are discussions about your leadership capabilities, but the performance management process does not actually incorporate those expectations there. So I do believe that a best practice is ensuring that those two things are tied together. Also, when you think about compensation as well, that's another good way to kind of incorporate into the full body of accountability. How are you compensating your teams around not only the contributions that they make each and every day, but also the culture that they're building and your expectations around the culture. So I think those two things work together: performance management, and then also the compensation model as well.
Typically, what types of feedback do you get from employees as it concerns their leaders?
It runs the gamut. It's interesting. So the past couple of weeks, I've actually been conducting focus group meetings with our employee resource group leaders. So we have 10 employee resource groups that represents 28,000 employees across the Verizon footprint. Each of the ERGs have an ERG leadership team that's actually comprised from employees all across the business. And so I've been conducting focus group meetings with each of the individual ERG leadership teams and asking questions about their experiences as it relates to development programs, their direct experiences with their leaders, questions like, how often do you have a career conversation with your leader? Do you feel like you have the tools and resources available to you to scale your career? Do you understand what your capabilities and skill sets are in order for you to take your career to the next level? So those are the types of questions I'm asking. And you receive kind of the gamut of feedback. The best feedback is that I meet with my leader regularly. Not only do I have a conversation about my performance, I have a conversation about my development. I feel like I'm in the driver's seat of being able to make that happen. And I'm very proactive in those conversations, and I ensure that I pull that through throughout the entire year. Like, that's the best possible feedback to get. Sometimes you do receive feedback where, some employees aren't as comfortable with having the conversation around their career, or they don't know how to create sponsorship and network their talents. And so that's where these focus groups are critically important and helpful, because we take these insights and we actually incorporate this into our learning and development portfolio, specifically for the ERG leaders, but then also we scale that across the organization. So like many companies, you receive the gamut, kind of runs the gamut of feedback in terms of the experiences that employees have. But what I believe is critically important is that you have listening posts within the environment to understand where are the variances, where are their opportunities, and more importantly, taking the action to ensure that you have a different outcome.
Your skill sets and programs are quite impressive. And the last question is, how accessible are you or someone from your team to the employees and leadership?
Oh, very. So, a little about my background. So what actually led, and me personally, and I would say broadly, the goal is to create an environment where employees feel comfortable and understand and know that regardless of title, band, level, that we have an open door policy. Whoever you may feel comfortable with, you are welcome and encouraged to have some transparent dialogue. And I would say personally, I have always practiced that before actually taking on this role. So I've been on the diversity, equity, and inclusion team for 2 years now. What actually led me to this role is actually a business leader. So I've led large customer service organizations, business sales organizations, indirect sales, retail sales teams. And while I was doing that work, I was also an employee resource group leader. I led our second largest employee resource group for about 5 years. And that's actually what led me to this work. And in all of the roles that I've held, all of the people leadership roles that I've held, even today, I always stay very close to the front line. I stay very close to the front line. I encourage folks to be very honest and transparent. I have a very much so an open door. I believe that when you create an environment where folks feel comfortable to be themselves, where they're open to share what's working well, but also what may not be working well, that really places you in a position to take action. So me personally, that's something that I practice each and every day. Even today in this role, being a part of a corporate function, I still stay very close to the frontline teams. Of course, having responsibility for the employee resource group strategy, that really gives me an opportunity to engage with employees across the business. And one reason why I'm facilitating focus group meetings that I mentioned earlier. So I do that quarterly just to make sure I stay close to the pulse outside of one-on-one conversations that I have. And I certainly encourage anyone who is leading a large organization, even if it's a small team, stay close to your front line, stay close to your employees, ask questions, ask the tough questions, encourage the feedback, but more importantly, follow through, take action, and make sure you follow up with those teams so they know what actions you're taking.
I'm sure the Verizon workforce appreciates all those efforts. I think it's okay to move on to the next section.
All right, perfect. Okay, so I mentioned employee resource groups a lot today, and so let's talk about it. So we have 10 employee resource groups across the Verizon footprint, open to any and all employees globally. Our employee resource groups, the 10 of them are actually sponsored by our C-level suite. So each of our 10 employee resource groups have an executive sponsor, along with an executive advisory board, which is typically a vice president or above across the business. And then each of our 10 employee resource groups also have an ERG leadership team. And so that leadership team is typically, is open to all employees who are eligible and in good standing. They're in that term for 2 years. They actually apply to the role. And the DEI office actually vets those employees, interviews them, and assigns them to the employee resource group where they have interests. So for their 2-year term, the employee resource group leaders, we have 55 of them that are global leaders, a total of 96 that includes our global team and also our regional leads as well. And so the structure of that leadership team, you have a global lead, a global operations lead. There's also a communications lead for the ERG, a finance chair, and a program and events lead as well for the ERG. For that 2-year term, as they enter the first year of the term, each of the ERGs create a business plan. And their business plan is focused on 4 key pillars. So career, culture, customer, and community. So each of the ERGs are also assigned a budget at the onset of each year. And so they build their business plans to coincide with that budget. And each of the ERGs have a theme for the year. They participate in many different activities, whether that be courageous conversations, bringing more awareness to the affinity group and perhaps some of the challenges or successes that the group is experiencing. They cross-collaborate across the ERGs to create, again, a sense of belonging and allyship as well. Each of the ERGs have cultural moments or cultural months, if you will, as an example. This month is Black History Month. So our Verizon Bold Employee Resource Group has a full month of activities where all employees have an opportunity to participate. The ERGs are also supported by our marketing organization, our communications teams, our corporate social responsibility team, our public policy organization, our environmental, social, and governance teams. So this shared responsibility across the organization to support each of the employee resource groups and ensure that the ERGs have a voice and that the stories are being shared not only internally to Verizon, but externally as well. So our ERG space continues to see great growth year over year. We're pretty excited about all of the great work that they're doing, not only internally to Verizon, but externally in the communities and where we do business as well. So as I mentioned, our ERGs are open to all employees, Verizon sponsored, employee-led volunteer organizations. Any employee can join any ERG, more than one ERG if they would like. And as I mentioned, all of the ERGs are focused on that 4C model. This really illustrates all that kind of supports or encompasses the ERG portfolio. So I mentioned each of the ERGs have a leadership sponsor, an executive advisory board, global and regional leadership. We also recently launched about 2 years ago. We're actually finishing our last term right here, our ERG Leadership Academy. So we recognize that from an ERG perspective, what better place to invest in the development, the career development of our employees, especially since these groups, for the most part, represent diverse populations. And so we lifted a program entitled the ERG Leadership Academy, where for the 2-year term for the ERG leaders, they have an opportunity to participate in career development activities. They receive exposure to many different organizations where there are interests in career navigation. We focus on wellness, resources, and opportunities available to them. So it really is a 2-year journey that's designed to support not only their work as an ERG leader, but also their careers as well. So we definitely see our employee resource group platform as a potential talent pipeline and also a place to help inform and provide business insights as well. Okay, so that was my last slide. Jason, are there any questions for me?
Well, before I open it up to the group at large, I have a question. You mentioned something called courageous conversations, and that piqued my interest. Would you tell us a little bit about courageous conversations?
Yes, absolutely. So it is just that, right? So many different topics, whether it be current events that are happening within society, right? So we have seen a lot of mass shootings as an example over the course of the past several years. that are impacting specific diverse communities. And, we can't expect that, because an employee walks through the door at work, that all of a sudden everything that's happening in life or around them in the world disappears, right? And so we are truly looking to create platforms for very candid dialogue around experiences, how, these circumstances are landing on them within the workplace. We invite our EAP partners into those conversations to provide resources around how to cope in circumstances like this, recognizing that not everyone has the same point of view on the multiple issues that exist out there, right? But we want to provide a platform where those perspectives can be shared. So that's just one example, but that happens pretty regularly within the environment. Typically, like as an example for Black History Month, there was a really good conversation on yesterday with our technology organization, and really thinking about how do we ensure that there's more diversity in tech. As an example, employees, executives share their own personal experiences across their career journey. So it truly is a very transparent space to receive some insights around, what's actually happening. And for those who are seeking to be an ally, or maybe you just want to kind of understand because perhaps this isn't your lived experience, it's a really good platform and space for those folks as well.
Okay, thank you. Now we're going to open it up to questions. Just simply type the word questions or type your question into the chat box. As a reminder, if you haven't updated your Zoom recently, please make sure you do so. The latest version allows your computer to download all of the text from the chat into one file with the name of the meeting. So there are a number of questions that are popping up. First one is from William Walker. Can you explain the 4C model again?
Sure, yes. So the 4C model is focused on customer, community, career, and also culture. So that 4C model really is a framework for the ERG, because these are massive ERG organizations. These ERG leaders also have day jobs as well, and they're volunteering their time. And so we really wanted to make sure that we had very clear framework that tied into our overarching business strategy. So you saw me share our 4 key stakeholders. So that 4C model actually supports our 4 key stakeholders within our business strategy. And so the ERGs receive a budget at the onset of every year, and their budget spend is based on their business plan for that 4C model. So they will develop activities, sponsorship activities, whatever that might be, within that 4C model, and their dollars are actually associated to that as well.
There's a question from Nikki Ouellette. How does Verizon support employees who are deaf or hard of hearing?
So definitely. So we certainly want to ensure that persons with disabilities know, one, that they have an opportunity to self-identify, so that we know what may actually be occurring within the environment, and then also what services we need to provide as well. So we have a very comprehensive accommodation process. So we ensure that, and that's actually funneled, a part of that team actually sits within our DEI office. And so really for any employee that has a disability, and perhaps if the technology isn't readily available, we do follow this accommodation process to ensure that whatever their needs are, that we're able to get that into the environment for them, depending on whatever their scope of work might be.
Another question, this one coming from Denise Beckles. What is the education and learning provided for leadership on leading diverse teams and managing to the employee based on their diverse needs?
You might ask me that one more time, Jason. I'm
reading it verbatim. What is the education and learning provided for leadership on leading diverse teams and managing to the employee based on their diverse needs?
So we have a number of platforms. So one, we have actually content that's actually delivered to our employee population, to our leadership population. We have a platform entitled Leadership Edge that we actually deliver every year. And that Leadership Edge platform, the kind of face-to-face classes, the interactions are for people leaders. And within that platform, we're focused on all facets of leadership capabilities. So you heard me mention earlier that we have a set of leadership principles, expectations for leaders in terms of self-leadership, people leadership, business leadership. And within those principles, there's some very clear guidance for what the expectations are, what the behaviors are, and how to execute those behaviors within the work environment. And we actually incorporate that into this Leadership Edge experience that we offer every year. So every quarter they receive some type of learning as it relates to what those concepts are. So that's one way. We also have a pretty impressive learning and development platform as well. It's called Degreed. Some of you may be familiar with it. And within Degreed, we actually curate content for specific topics like diversity, equity, and inclusion as an example, how to create an inclusive team environment. So that's one way that we deliver educational content. And then we also have a DEI learning pathway that's actually available to all employees. And that DEI learning pathway gives context to, one, the many different dimensions of diversity. So if you're looking to learn more about a specific group or entity, you can learn there. If you're also looking to polish your leadership skills and get some advice on things that you might want to do to resolve certain circumstances with your environment, that content is included there as well. So our learning and development kind of tree, if you will, cycle is pretty comprehensive in that we have kind of standing initiatives every year for our leaders. We have self-guided, self-paced opportunities. And then we have platforms that are specific to diversity, equity, and inclusion for learning as well.
And there's a follow-up question from the same person, which is, do you have information on what the leadership competencies are for leading diverse employees?
Yeah, I can just share with you how Verizon thinks about it, right? So when you think about self-leadership, people leadership, business leadership, certainly I can share some perspective on that. So perhaps my follow-up I can share some content on that for the team.
Okay, and there's a question from Iveth Mascara. First, she thanks you, and then can you recommend resources for DEI data and funding to support investing in DEI? She is a nonprofit organization, so resources are limited.
Yeah, definitely. So perhaps, I'm sorry, who was that asked the question? Perhaps I can connect with her offline and maybe get her a couple of folks even on my end who she could engage with as well.
Okay, I'll make sure that we share the information with you after the program is over.
Okay.
And we have a question from Dave Snyder. How can a scholarship group that provides needs-based scholarships to over 800 local low-income K through 12 students so they can attend private school, facilitate our 11 to 12th grade students awareness of opportunities at Verizon? 100% of our graduates attend college.
Okay, well, we have a number. I mean, we have from a talent acquisition perspective, and that's one of my key partners. We have a number of diversity partnerships specifically for recruiting diverse talent. And one area that we are focused on are high school students and also recent college grads as well. So perhaps I could connect you with that individual. And there are a couple of organizations perhaps that you might want to partner with as well. Depending on what these students, what their career focuses are. I don't know if you're focused on STEM related activity or if it kind of runs the gamut in terms of the educational experience, but I can certainly partner.
Okay, and there's a follow-up question from Lynn Perry. Actually, she asked the same question. What we'll do is we'll make sure that you have the entire chat with the information on folks that are posting their email addresses and phone numbers.
Okay, that'll be great. And maybe we'll have a powwow together and talk about all of the great resources that are available.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think that would be very helpful because your presentation is so interesting and has been very stimulating. Let me see if there are any more questions. Why should DEI be a shared responsibility within an organization? Were you able to hear me?
I'm sorry, say what you want me to answer that, Jason?
Yes.
Oh, okay, sorry. Yeah, yes. So it should be a shared responsibility because everyone has a responsibility to ensure that the organization is successful, right? And so, again, in most organizations, it takes people in order for the organization to be successful. And if the people don't feel as if they have a place or that they are in a position to contribute, or if they don't understand why their contributions matter, then it's going to be very tough to sustain any type of long-term success within the organization. So it certainly should be a shared responsibility across the organization because we all have a role to play to ensure that the organization is successful.
Okay. Why is inclusion important to building culture and achieving results?
Well, I talked about it a lot here in terms of, and now more than ever, the workplace has changed pretty significantly over the last 5 years, right? So if any of you are recruiting new talent into your organization, there is almost an expectation that your organization has a cause, that you're showing up in the community, that you are doing things to move the world forward. Like there's an expectation as potential hires are looking for their next career move. Oftentimes they are researching how this organization is positioned in the communities and where they do business. And they also want to understand the culture of the organization that they're potentially going to, because as we all know, there are many options that are out there. So having an inclusive workforce, an inclusive workplace, an inclusive culture where you recognize that not everyone has the same lived experiences. And so therefore that may mean that you might have to adjust to ensure that you're meeting the needs of your employees. That's really important. So creating an inclusive culture or having an inclusive environment ensures that you're well positioned to be innovative, to gain all perspectives, and to determine what perspectives may be the right course in order for your organization to be successful. So you only gain that by creating an inclusive workforce.
Just an announcement that I'd like to make. If you want to be included in post-presentation discussions, please include your contact information in the chat for Natalie and NJBIA. There's a couple more questions coming in and then we'll wrap it up. Sheila Tolles her question is DEI training mandatory at Verizon? And if so, how often is it administered?
Yes, it is annually. So we have a code of conduct training that we administer annually. We also have an unconscious bias course that is administered annually as well. Also, for all of our new people leaders, have an onboarding experience that also includes diversity, equity, and inclusion content. Also, for all of our leadership development programs, our top talent programs, diversity, equity, and inclusion content is integrated there as well. And so the work that we've been doing for a number of years is really evaluating our employee life cycle. So when you think about from onboarding, all the way through, how we retain our employees, where are the critical moments in the life cycle where we should be integrating content and awareness around the topic? And so we continue that work. So today, yes, there are requirements And there are requirements at varying levels depending on where you're transitioning as well.
And here's the final question. I'm not sure if you've covered it, but how can employee resource groups contribute towards inclusive culture?
You know, they contribute pretty tremendously in that, and it's really the platform that you create for them to be in a position to contribute. That's one, right? And so I mentioned earlier that our marketing organization, our communications organization, they support our employee resource groups to help lend voice. And so internally to Verizon, we use a number of platforms to engage and communicate with our employees. A couple of times a week, we have an inside up to speed event where we actually, a lot of times actually post that event live on Twitter. You can follow it on Twitter. And that's one platform where we have an opportunity for ERGs to be showcased. We showcase the stories of our employees. If there's a heritage or cultural month that's currently occurring, we showcase that as well. We participate and host a number of LinkedIn Live sessions also. And all of that content is available to any employee, regardless of if they are an ERG participant or not. And so we leverage the kind of full scale of our communications platform to ensure that the ERGs are given voice, and that if you want to learn more, you have an opportunity to do so. And then also, because the ERGs, you know, these employees sit across all of our business units. And so they have an opportunity to even go back into their business units and share what their experiences are, encourage others to participate. Recently, our ERGs actually all came together and they've been conducting ERG roadshows to all of the business units, sharing who they are, why they decided to become an ERG leader, what their ERG is about, and encouraging folks to participate. So it's moments like that that matter. Even when you think about returning to the office, so I know that that's a hot topic across many different organizations today. You know, are we going to be required to return to the office? We Verizon have not given any type of direction around you must be in these number of days. We certainly have, based on the business need of the business unit, will kind of dictate what the schedule looks like. But the ERGs, they're hosting events within the office locations now as well. And so again, creating moments that matter, creating environments within the workplace that would attract folks to want to be there. So those are just a couple of ways that the ERGs contribute towards creating this inclusive culture.
I'm just going to ask you to comment on this last post. Lynn Perry indicates she would love a discussion of how to create ERGs in a small organization. Can you comment on that briefly?
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, and you can start, I have this conversation frequently. You know, first it's, you know, I mentioned that each of our C-level executives are sponsors for the ERGs. And I will say that having that support, one, is really important, right? So being very clear and intentional around what is it that you want to accomplish with the ERG platform, and do you have the right stakeholdering and sponsorship amongst your executive levels and senior leaders as well to implement that within the environment? And then also, where's there, you know, where's there the most need? So, you know, I don't think that your organization has to be any particular size to start. You know, I've had conversations with many different organizations of many different sizes that are in many different places on this journey. And I think all of you have likely experienced that. Everyone's at a different place on the journey. So I certainly encourage it, but definitely having the support of your leadership teams will be really important.
Sounds great. Thank you so much, Natalie. Now we're going to do a little networking. You'll see a pop-up to join a breakout room. Just remember, we will not be returning here after the network, but we'll see you next month for our next DE&I council meeting on March 16th with the fantastic Mayor Dalia Vertrice of Hillside, New Jersey. You're not going to want to miss that one. So as Daniel puts us into breakout rooms, we do have one question to help get our networking and conversation going. From what you gathered from our talk today, what action can you take to get involved and make a difference? Thank you very much, everyone, and I'll see you in the breakout rooms.